On this week's Back of the Grid, we've got a new champion, we've got more Ferrari infighting, and a self-imposed drive-through penalty. So let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to Back of the Grid. I'm Chris, joined as ever by Stu.
Hello.
And by Tom.
Hi.
And we're here to talk about the parts of the Las Vegas Grand Prix that they let us see.
Yeah.
I don't want to dwell too much on this, but my goodness, that was some of the worst TV direction I've ever seen.
I've never seen anything like it. I could not believe... I was watching the rerun through the glazed eyes of a horrible hangover, so it was hard enough to see what was going on as it was. Then for the fact that they just seemed to miss all the loads of the action in the first 10 laps, it was absolutely insane. David Coulthard just going on about track reminds me of Montreal, middle of an overtake going on. Just, what are you doing?
The timing tower was literally just dancing with overtakes, and we were just watching. I don't know what we were watching.
Nothing. Just watching nothing and listening to commentators reminisce. It was strange. And
it's not even like they were wasting the time showing us the sights of Vegas or celebrities. They were just showing us nothing.
Cars. When people say Formula One is just cars going around the track, that's exactly what they mean. That's what the race director wanted to show, just cars going around the track. Wasn't interested in showing any overtakes or any of that.
Absolutely bizarre.
Mental. Absolutely mental.
But we do have a world champion, as expected. He basically had 9 of his 10 fingers on the trophy after last race.
Since race 5 of the season, maybe.
Yeah. Lando was desperately trying to drag one of his hands back off it, but Verstappen finished 5th place. That was more than he needed to settle his title. I mean, early in the weekend, it didn't look quite so likely. They were really struggling on Friday. Basically, the initial stories were like, oh, they've brought the wrong wing with them and they haven't got time to bring the right one. It turns out they just don't have a super low drag wing like a lot of other teams have developed, which I guess is us seeing the budget cap and the CFD time and stuff in action. Like, that's an area Red Bull decided we don't have the time and money to spend on this.
Yeah, and you must remember they are under much more strict limitations than other teams from their own transgressions in the past, from not complying with the budget cap. So that took another bunch. Yeah, it took a load more money off of them. So that this is kind of like a delayed punishment for all of that, and also a punishment for just being the best.
Yeah. But yeah, like their wing was too dragging. They were losing like 6/10 on the straights. But I mean, fair play to them. They basically did some aero development in the garage with God knows what tools to just ground away some of the rear wing and made it work better.
That is why I love Formula One. Stuff like that, for all the high tech gizmos and all the fancy CFD machines they've got, and all the all the design in the world. Sometimes the best way of developing your car is to take an angle grinder to it.
Crazy.
I mean, we'll talk about Verstappen's season more when we get to like season reviews and stuff. But a sort of quite a mediocre way of sealing a very impressive title. I was chatting on our Discord the other day, actually, of Verstappen's 4 titles. This one, he's kind of anonymously come home 5th. His first was 2021 and everything around that. Yeah. His second was the race in Japan that got cut short and no one was quite sure if he had enough points or not. And it sort of took Johnny Herbert doing mental maths during the interview. Like, he's only had one real I've won a race to win a title kind of things. But there we go. It was a race that was won by George Russell for his 2nd win of the season. 3rd on track, but 2nd officially by some margin. Yeah, a dominant Mercedes this weekend.
Weird. I mean, it's the temperature. Weird. It's obviously the temperature, isn't it? That car just does not like it warm. It does not like normal Formula One temperatures, but it doesn't
like double digits. Apparently,
it's the only one that can operate that cold.
It's like, it's 7 degrees. Yeah, that'll do nicely.
Just imagine, if they'd done the test at Barcelona during the freezing cold time of year, and everyone would have been like, "Oh, the Mercedes looks amazing," and then would have shown up to Australia and just been sorely disappointed in normal temperatures. Although they weren't terrible in Australia, were they? But
Yeah.
it's funny.
Continues to be
Bahrain, of course, was the first race, but anyway.
Yeah, just a bizarre season with a bizarre car for them. But yeah, second place for Hamilton as well. He started back in 10th after kind of mucking up Q3. He looked pretty annoyed with himself after the race, and I reckon he knows that if he had not messed up qualifying, that would have been a win for him.
Yeah, I think so.
so,
I think the way he came through was, I mean, no safety cars or anything like that, was there? It was just all done on track pretty much. So
yeah.
Very,
both
very
of them
drive.
were just super impressive pace.
It just shows you what an advantage the Mercedes had for them to be able to do that. But
yeah. Some fun stats for you. Russell's now the 7th driver to win more than one race in the season. It's the first time that's ever happened in F1. Admittedly, there's a lot more races for it to happen these days, but still, an interesting little tip all the same. Now we've had 6 winners in 6 races for the first time since 2012, which is the season that we bang on about all the time as one of the all-time great seasons. So if we can get a different winner next race, it'll equal the 7 in 7 that we had that season.
Are there, I don't know, who could do it? So we've had 7. I mean, Perez is not going to win it, is it? So we've had all the drivers from the top.
It'd probably have to be
other than
Hamilton.
Perez from the top 14.
It'd have to be Hamilton. It'd have to be Hamilton or Perez. Really.
Has Hamilton not won one?
Not in those 6.
No, has he not been one of the 6?
Who
was it?
So the 6 are basically the top 6 in the standings, and then the first one that goes back to having 2 wins is Leclerc because he won. Or is it? Yeah, it's Leclerc because he won in Monza and won in Texas.
So right. So Hamilton or Piastri, I guess, are the most.
Hamilton's got one win, and that was kind of by default, wasn't it? Because
no, he's got 2. He's got Silverstone and Spa, which he inherited.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Anyway, we digress.
Yeah, so we get into the weeds, can't we?
Yeah. Let's talk about Ferrari. A disappointing 3rd and 4th place, I think. They just seem to be their own worst enemy the entire race.
Maybe spent too much time fighting each other instead of chasing Russell.
Yeah.
That's another matter, isn't it?
But I think even then, though, I don't think that car had the pace to match the Mercedes in these conditions.
I think it was always a double podium probably for them.
Yeah.
It should have been. I don't think they should have maybe been beaten by Hamilton if they'd have kept out of each other's way and just got on with it. But
yeah, they kind of gifted him.
Them. Yeah, they made
him
it
that
easy
position,
for him.
didn't they? I think he would have got by them. The advantage was so strong in the Mercedes that I think that in the braking zones they were much quicker. So yeah, they were better. The Mercedes was way better on its brakes. I think it would have been eventually because the degradation as well on the Ferrari was just abysmal. So and you saw it happen really as Leclerc's pace dropped off at the start of the race. So that was only going to happen again with the graining they were having and things. And the Mercedes just didn't seem to suffer any real degradation and any real graining. So that ultimately, I think, if it had happened on track and not through Ferrari's messy pit stop sort of strategy, if you can call it a strategy, then it would have happened it would have been candy from a baby, I think, by that point.
That certainly could have made it harder for Mercedes, though.
Yeah, they could have.
Because, I mean, that was another thing that we kind of missed. We had that almighty fight with Russell and Leclerc early on, which we should commend Russell on his defence in those few laps as well. It was when they were going sort of side by side through the last corner and then down the pit straight, that was impressive stuff.
Yeah.
And then just off screen, Leclerc just disappeared. You could watch the delta just getting bigger and bigger, and he started disappearing down the timing. And it was just the graining, destroyed the tyres in the process. Then we had, after Sainz was ahead, Leclerc and Hamilton caught him up, and they told Sainz to let Leclerc by because he was faster at that point. And then Sainz seemed to keep saying, "Oh yeah, I'll do it at this corner," and then didn't. I'll do it at this corner, and then didn't. And it took him a whole lap to do it, and nearly gave Hamilton the place in the process. Then there was the pit entry thing when they told him to abort when he was in the pit entry. Have you seen, by the way, how he got away with a penalty for that?
I'm assuming
wondered why there wasn't a
I'm
penalty.
assuming
Why-
there's a cone in a weird place because they started putting a cone somewhere where you
So-
weren't allowed to cross the line
Yeah.
anymore, right?
That's what I
It's-
thought. I thought he mustn't have gone by the cone.
Yeah, it's the same as the old in that we still
Yeah,
use
the
from
bollard
Hamilton,
issue.
Germany.
Yeah,
Basically, if you read the wording of the rules, have all these things about crossing the line on pit entry and all that nonsense, but the wording of it applies to cars going into the pit lane. So if you don't actually go into the pit lane, the crossing the line stuff doesn't apply to you.
Right.
And that's
That's fair
basically
enough.
as simple as it was.
so you can
It
change
is.
your mind at the last minute.
Yeah, I definitely think there needs to, because I'm sure other sports, I think NASCAR is one of them, has like a commitment line.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
as soon as you get to that line, you cannot change your mind.
Yeah,
I think at certain tracks, maybe they do need something like that. Like
I thought we did
the way
have
he dipped out of the
a
pit entry
bollard.
back onto the track.
I thought we
So-
did have
so
a bollard
I think
that
that
said once
circuits-
you'd passed that point,
Maybe it's just an
Yeah.
oversight on this
bail
track
out
then.
of the line because there's certain tracks where like Brazil is a good example, and there's one or two others I can't remember off the top of my head where
but the racing line
the
goes
racing
through
line
the...
goes through the white line. So I
Yeah.
understand why the white line itself is not the cut off point, but I'm sure that there's bollards in place because I
There
feel
was only
like
Hockenheim.
I feel like that was the whole thing when Hamilton left and went across the grass to avoid going in the pits. The whole thing that we have in box from
But I think
is
that applies the
from-
other way.
No, because
You can't go past the bollard and then join the pit.
And no, and then enter the
yeah,
entry.
I suppose
It goes.
should
It's
apply
the
both
other.
ways, though,
it's the
surely.
other. Yeah, you'd
think
think it'd
so.
apply both ways, wouldn't you? But
Like,
yeah,
once
I
you
think
pass
it's
that
you can't go
bollard-
by the bollard and then join the
Yeah.
pit lane entry.
and then
lane.
that gives you leeway for the line to potentially be semi on the racing line because there is a few tracks like it that
yeah,
you know,
Brazil
is the prime
fine case.
example, but you know there's others where
There's plenty.
you have
of
that
us.
scenario. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure, like Montreal, doesn't the line come all the way out onto the straight, meaning that if you're going like wide
Yeah.
across, across onto the apex, you technically cross it again.
The Montreal
So-
pit entry is sketchy as hell, though.
Well,
the breaking point for the pits is after the breaking point
Yeah.
for the final corner.
Yeah,
But there's nothing I can do because next to it is a rowing
Water.
lake. So, yeah.
Anyway,
And then for good measure, Ferrari, after Leclerc did his last pit stop, Ferrari told Leclerc, Sainz has been told not to overtake you. But the message they gave Sainz wasn't worded like that. So Sainz went ahead and overtook him.
how
so
was
the
it
basic-
worded?
It was basically, I think they said to Sainz something along the lines of, don't like give Leclerc a hard time or don't like slow Leclerc down or something. So he heard that as like, oh, okay, I'll just overtake him, but not like go hard wheel to wheel fighting with him. Whereas they said to Leclerc, oh yeah, Sainz isn't going to pass you, don't worry about it. So he overtook him.
Communication, that's what it is. Just
Yeah.
abysmal communication, that isn't it?
So they ended up with a third and fourth and two very annoyed drivers after the race.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Still closed the gap to McLaren a bit, but maybe could have been slightly better. But as you say, Stu, it would have been. I still think Hamilton probably would have been on them by the end of the race.
yeah.
I think
you
they
did-
got the maximum. They could
Yeah,
have.
I think that they could have definitely made it harder for him, but ultimately he'd have caught him regardless, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
We mentioned McLaren. Pretty tough weekend for them. They kind of knew it was going to be. It's a front limited circuit, which has been kind of their weakness all season, and they had pretty bad front graining. Finished 6th and 7th, which, all things considered, probably about as good as they could have hoped for. They still had the weird thing McLaren always seem to have, which is the last stint of the race, the car kind of came alive, but it still wasn't enough to close the gap.
Well, again, like Norris specifically does have an issue with graining his front as well. He has had throughout
Yeah.
most of the season. He's on record as saying that that's something that that affects him particularly.
Yeah.
So I think that would explain a lot of Brazil, but I think it also it's plain to see here. So
Yeah.
Brazil's kind of like a weird case, but
We also had Piastri's penalty for being out of his pit box. I've only seen the one camera from the start, but it barely looked like he was forward at all from what I saw. I'd like to see another shot of it to see how far out of it he was. But
Yeah, it came through as false start again, didn't it? As well, even though he was like
Yeah.
incorrectly positioned in his box, apparently incorrectly positioned in his box.
yeah, a bit of a weird one.
Must have been really, really marginal.
Yeah, it must have been super marginal. Haas and Alpine, who are in a bit of a constructors fight at the moment. Hulkenberg managed a pretty impressive 8th place, which moves Haas back ahead of Alpine in the constructors, which is potentially worth up to $10 million for them, which is a big old result for them.
A chunk of change.
Yeah. Alpine, meanwhile, had pretty amazing Saturday. That 3rd place for Gasly in qualifying was just out of nowhere.
What was
Super
that?
impressive.
Like,
Yeah.
how
Like-
does that happen?
Crazy.
Like, the track was like definitely ramping up as it went on, but not to that extent.
Yeah,
That was lap of his life.
that is literally the lap of his life. That isn't it? That how has he managed that?
so impressive.
What a lap! Yeah, really impressed by that.
And he was doing all right in the opening phase as well. He'd only really lost 1 place, I think, in the opening laps, but then had some kind of power unit failure. Well, it was a pretty spectacular one, actually, wasn't it? It was a proper,
Yeah, there was proper blue smoke out the back of it, wasn't there?
yeah, which you don't see so much these days. But yeah, real shame for him.
Yeah.
Which brings us to poor old Ocon, who basically got called into the pit lane, and there was no mechanics waiting for him. We talk about communication failures. They seem to have told their driver there was a pit stop and no one else.
Yeah,
Well,
that
that
was
was-
like Ferrari.
It was basically
Hold my beer.
Yeah, it's basically
Yeah.
the same thing as Ferrari, just worse.
Like there's a shot from his onboard of him in the pit lane, gets to his pit box, and there's literally one bloke just stood in the pit box with his arms folded, just having a little look around, and no one else.
What? I wonder if like something happened to their radios or something. Maybe
mean,
they sent the
allegedly
message
that's
and then
what
there was a
they've-
disconnect.
That's what they've said, but whether that's
There
just
seemed to be a
saving
few-
face
You're
or
the team
not.
principal. You're sat on the pit wall and you look around. There's no one there waiting to service the car.
Yeah.
You know the car's coming in. You must be. I mean, there must come a point where you're like,
Where is it?
well, if they go running out now, they're getting run over maybe,
Yeah.
or like something bad could happen. to
Yeah,
someone.
maybe.
So it's a dangerous environment, a pit lane. So
Yeah,
maybe they realised after that cut-off point because there has to be a cut-off point. And
You could have,
Yeah.
in
I
theory,
wonder
still
if
come
it's
out whilst the car
ridiculous.
was stationary, though. Like,
you'd think it. Well, yeah, you'd think it'd stop.
yeah. I thought this. Why did not just pull in and be like, "Where are you?" lads?"
like, it's not the first time we'd have ever seen anything like that. Like, a car comes in and nobody's there,
And they come
and
running
then
out
they
with
like come
tyres.
running with the tires. Yeah, so like that's not that uncommon.
I think. Do you think he would have lost? He probably would have lost a lot less time.
Yeah, you'd have thought so. Or I mean,
Yeah.
about the same. It's it's not going to make that much difference, is it? As long as they can get to the tires and
It's a strange
them on
one,
the
very,
car,
very
but,
strange one.
yeah.
The whole series of events on that one is just really unusual. But
Oh,
it's one of those races, I suppose.
according to Discord, Sarah in Discord just said that he'd actually just completely missed his spot because there was no pit board either. So he,
Oh, yeah, 'cause I
he
guess they're
completely
looking
missed
for-
the
Of course,
whole
they're
thing
looking out.
because of
Yeah.
that because he's
Yeah.
looking for something that isn't there. So yeah, that's a fair point.
Imagine
Yeah.
the frustration. You'd be so cheesed off.
I do wonder if it's like a city circuit problem because there seem to be a few different radio issues throughout the race. Like Stroll lost his radio on like lap 1 and did the entire race with a no radio, which sounds like a
And
nightmare.
he says that, but he probably just.
I was about to say, I bet Ferrari are claiming something similar with the Sainz situation. To be fair, both of them.
Also, Blaze in Discord has posted a gif of
radio.
It's quite
Can you
good.
hear me?
Quite a good Stroll impression. That, to be fair,
That is quite a good Stroll
You've got to
impression,
get like
actually,
the back, your nasal.
you got to use the back of
Yeah.
your throat.
Yeah, exactly. You got to talk.
I'm in the gravel. I've spun it into the gravel.
Yeah.
I'm in the wall.
I'm stuck. I'm stuck.
I'm in the beeping wall.
Guys, I'm stuck.
yeah. Maybe he had no radio telling him not to drive into the gravel the other weekend.
Yeah.
Anyway, where have we got to? Oh yeah, RB. Interestingly, just for these final 3 races, they have the current Red Bull rear suspension on the car.
What is that? I mean, that's just
So,
so
it's quite
wrong.
interesting,
Isn't
actually.
it?
Yeah.
So I
it's
was reading about this
within the
earlier.
rules still.
Yeah,
But, sorry,
yeah.
go on.
So Yeah, there's a list of parts that you're allowed to buy from other teams, not make yourself, and the rear suspension is one of them. But something that's not on the list is the suspension fairings that they put around them to make them more aerodynamic. So they would have had the Red Bull rear suspension much sooner, but they had to make their own fairings to put on them before they could put the suspension on the car, which
am
is
I right in saying that
bizarre.
Haas do something similar with Ferrari? Don't they buy their rear suspension from Ferrari?
Haas buy absolutely everything they can get
actually,
away with from
fair,
Ferrari.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it helps. Sonoda got a fairly decent ninth place. He was through to Q3 again and got a ninth place. So, sort of, because they're sort of in that Haas and Alpine constructors fight, so limited the damage slightly there. But yeah, interesting all the same. And then finally, poor old Williams, who, if you haven't seen the video Williams put out of them getting their cars back from Brazil, that's a fascinating video to watch, like inside the factory of them cracking open crates full of bits and working out what they can and can't keep and putting the cars back together. Really interesting stuff. And then after that, they found themselves with yet another rebuild after that crash for Colapinto in qualifying. Bit of a silly crash, clipping the inside of the wall like that. I mean, it happens.
Well, I think in that car, in this grip level of circuit as well, it's probably quite unpredictable to drive. You're probably not quite sure whether it's going to understeer or what each lap. And with the track probably changed, you know, the track was alive in its dynamism. Like it was just a different. Each corner was different every time you took it, by the sounds of it. So. I think it's understandable. I think, especially if you're a rookie, I think, you know, that's a fair mistake. But I don't think he's done himself any favours by doing it.
It's funny watching the media circus over the last couple of weeks, because there's been like so much like, oh, are Red Bull interested in Colapinto? Are they going to put him in the Red Bull next year? Then all of a sudden he's had two bad weekends. And it's all like, oh, Red Bull are losing interest. Is he even going to have an F1 career anymore? Like,
could very well be entirely intentional by Colapinto of, I do not want that job. Crash. Ignore me, guys. I'm not as reliable as you think I am.
I'd rather not go to Red Bull and get sacked after 6 months. Thank you very much.
I'll bide my time. I'll just crash a bit.
Although, I mean, if Perez's performances is anything to go by, those days are gone at Red Bull. They just keep you forever.
Well, that's true.
Be enough Mexican money with you, then.
Colapinto brings a pretty decent amount of sponsorship with him. So,
that's true.
Yeah.
Perfect replacement.
But yeah, 50G crash. He had to go to the medical centre. Was cleared to race, but yeah, he finished out the points. And then another rough weekend for Albon. He's on a real tough run of form recently. Out qualified by Colapinto again. Actually had a decent start to the race. He'd got from 18th up into sort of in the battle for the bottom of the points, but he also had a power unit issue, which was a shame for him. Yeah, he's not been the Albon we're used to in the last sort of 4 or 5 races, has he? Like,
no.
Something's
gone wrong for him this season, I guess. Like
the Drive to Survive storyline is Colapinto's come in and rattled him, and he's like,
of course he will.
Can't handle it, competitive. I don't know if it's.
I don't.
Maybe there's an element of that, but I think there's definitely more to it than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's. I mean, we've mentioned every team except Sauber, but once again, they literally did nothing.
Yeah.
They painted some flames on the car. Didn't make it go any faster.
Might as well have been in flames.
Yeah. Have you seen that clip of Bottas with the sweatshirt that he's been selling?
No.
Bottas has been doing this whole thing on Instagram. It's like what's next. He's just been doing weird thing. Like someone says what's next, and then he did that thing where he did an Ironman in a day in like a swimming pool on a treadmill.
Was mental.
And then it's like, what's next? So he went and spent a day learning to surf. So he's selling these sweatshirts. But Ted asked him about it and was like, oh, you're giving money to charity as well? And Bottas is like, oh, yeah, we're raising money for families who've been affected by sudden job losses. And then just stares into the camera. It's so good. Yeah.
I've opened it whilst literally as you were basically saying what was said, and that, so I've not got the audio on, but you basically said it as he was saying it in the video.
I love Bottas. I'm going to miss him if he's not on the grid next year.
Yeah.
Although I do have another excuse to mention him slightly later in the podcast, but we'll get there. First of all, awards time.
Yeah.
Driver of the day?
I think the good case for Hamilton, obviously making his way from it was 10th, wasn't it? Because he got through to Q3, but then never really got an error in Q3. I mean, I know when the low starting position is kind of their own fault, it's a little bit of a. But it's still a good recovery. It's still a good recovery drive, to get back to where he did. So I think that's probably
Russell as well.
And, Russell just for disappearing.
Yeah. And holding off Leclerc early doors as well. I think if Leclerc had got past him in that opening phase, it could have been a very different race.
I don't think it would have been that much different, but I think he would have retaken him because Leclerc's tyres were going to go within 4 laps of that.
Well, that's true, yeah.
I mean, you didn't really see anything of anyone else in the grid, generally speaking, did you? So
yeah, that's the trouble, isn't it?
Comment on anyone else's drives because the coverage was
Hulkenberg
that bad.
8th, but he only really gained a place. I can go with Hamilton, I think, on this occasion.
I think he made it interesting. He made the race that if the award is for making the day interesting, then Hamilton definitely gets it because it looked like he might even catch Russell.
Yeah,
and if he'd caught Russell and then won the race, then obviously that would be absolute slam dunk driver of the day. But I do think probably is still. I mean, all the haters are going to just say I'm biased against anyone who isn't British now, but because we're making a British driver of the day. But I can't help it if he drives really well and he deserves it.
Yeah. So. I think it's he maximised that result ultimately, and that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Again, it's hard when you don't see most of the people in the race.
It's true.
Likewise, move of the day, we saw a couple.
I mean, we saw one good one from someone I would say quite unexpected. To be fair,
yes.
I
assume you're talking about Perez.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Perez double move.
Oh, the 2 into turn 1.
The other
was it
two,
turn 1 or turn 14?
I can't even remember, to be honest.
Turn the end of the back straight, whatever number that is.
So it was at the end of the lap.
I think 14.
Yeah. I was waiting for the
move.
crunch.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows you that you can actually overtake cars without making contact with them.
Yeah.
I did think Russell's defence against Leclerc as well. When Leclerc almost got the job done around the inside. It was good, fair racing, left room for each other. That was really, really good as well. So
there was a good one that. There's a good one that I think. I saw it in the highlights earlier, and I think they've slipped it in the highlights because it wasn't on the broadcast.
They do
late in the race when Hulkenberg got Tsunoda. He again turned 14 the end of the back straight. He got alongside and he went around the outside of Tsunoda into that corner, which was pretty tasty.
That's good. That is good.
Yeah. So although most people won't have seen it, I'm almost inclined. No, actually, a double overtake. It's hard to say no to.
Yeah, I think Perez gets it.
Yeah, we'll give that Perez. And then finally,
honestly, what the f*** are we doing here?
There's a few choices this week, isn't there? I think.
Yeah, I mean that's Vegas, though, isn't it? There's always going to be some.
Yeah. Oh my god! So let's go. I mean, we've spoke about a lot of this already. The broadcast missing.
Yeah.
The majority of the action we covered right at the beginning. Alpine's self-imposed drive-through we spoke about. Stroll's radio we've already spoke about. The post-race sort of not shenanigans, but just nonsense, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
The amount of time it took to do all
so
that.
long.
It just took forever to get them round to wherever they were going. They were just sat in these cars, just chatting. It's boring.
It's like the limousine of awkward in Vegas rather than the room of awkward, isn't it?
Yeah. It was just dull.
I really enjoyed how
the room of awkward gone.
Yeah, Verstappen's just won a world championship, and suddenly he's in the back of a Rolls Royce, just poking around, what's this? Oh, what's that do?
And
is this
good
with content? GP? Is this? Yeah,
it's just not the content we're here for, is it?
It was bizarre, and all that's thanks standing in front of some fountains to be interviewed by Terry Crews.
Yeah,
sure.
Which, to be fair, Terry Crews looked like he was absolutely loving life. Like he was having the best time.
He
in those
was.
interviews. And that was good. That I enjoyed that.
Who, by his own admission, had never watched a race before Miami this year, and then he was like, "This is great."
But he was just so excited. He was like a kid in a sweet shop, wasn't he? They were like his heroes. Like he was so buzzed off of it. It was wicked.
I've kind of got time for that. Like if he's sort of never watched a race before Miami early in the year, but has like instantly fallen in love with the sport and become that interested in it, I've got time for that kind of celebrity collaboration. It's when they're there and they've clearly got no interest. They're just there to either promote something or to just be seen there because it's cool to be seen there. But like when someone seems that excited to actually be part of it, because I mean, I could be wrong, but Terry Crews has always seemed like a pretty genuine guy, so I don't think he'd fake that kind of enthusiasm just for the sake of it. No,
I don't think he was not. So, you couldn't fake that enthusiasm.
It felt genuine.
He was so into it, and it's in contrast with at the end of qualifying the day before, they got some random food influencer, I think, a cooking influencer or something like that, to hand over the little tyre and sign it, and he just didn't look like he cared. He just wasn't even remotely interested in he just did what he had to do and then walked off. It's like, get
to be fair, the cutting away to celebrities wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be, actually.
That's because they were busy showing mundane track action.
Exactly.
It's ironic, isn't it? The one time they don't cut away to show random things like the sphere and just the strip in general and so on, and instead they just show mundane track action instead of actual track action.
Yeah, they were, but they were. They were. To be fair to them, they did. They didn't overdo it with any of the sort of crazy shots of just stuff that isn't the Formula One race. They kind of they did at least stick to cars on track, which is commendable. It's just a shame they were looking at the wrong cars for the majority of the time.
I also really enjoyed with Terry Crews, someone new would come up to be interviewed, and they all just kind of looked at each other, and he was like, "You asked something to Jensen." Clearly, he's I'm excited to be here, but I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, very good. I'd definitely sooner have him than Danica Patrick, that's for sure.
Or Hinch. I'm not a big fan of Hinch myself, but anyway.
If you have the ability to watch it with Hinch,
people like him, but I don't get it. The next
I don't mind him. Anyway, I think I want to give it to Alpine's self-imposed drive-through because just every time I read that, it makes me laugh. Yeah. So
fair enough.
That's fair.
It feels very much on brand for this.
Yeah.
Right, Tom, do you want to do us some predictions? It's slim pickings.
Quick bit of predictions and fantasy. So in Predictions League, we basically scored one single point between a lot of us, and that was Chris's Gasly DNF. So well done, Chris.
Thanks.
In Listenerland, 3 people all scored 3 points, and that was AJ Metzler, Scott Jeffries and Derek Anderson. So congrats to you 3, you're this week's top scorers. And then over in the standings, Gordon Barham still leads the way with 39 points, but he's still pretty close because Steen Nielsen's on 36, Jeff Dusha and Derek Anderson are then both tied for 3rd on 35. So pretty close there still with a couple of races to go. For F1's official fantasy, Wumbaronis won this week with 270 points, and Ricky Bobby Racing is leading with 4,985, but there's only about 100 points between Ricky Bobby and the next nearest person, so that one technically is closable. And then over in Grid Rival, Scuderia Numero Enzo won this week with 1,038 points, and Mighty Hawk 44 again is leading the way there, but with 21,382 points. Which again, the gap has come down there. There's only a couple of 100 points in that, and in Grid Rival, that is pretty close. So there's still a couple of people that might be able to close on Mighty Hawk before the end of the season. If you want to get involved with any of that, head to backgrid.com. You can sign up for Predictions League or take a look at both the fantasy leagues from links there. It's worth signing up for predictions because obviously we've got 2 races left in the next 2 weeks, but you can win a prize if you score 5 out of 5. So be sure to go get involved for the next couple of races. We'll come back to this in a minute, I suppose.
Well, let's do storylines, shall we? Sorry, Chris.
Well,
I'm just overtaking hosting the episode.
No, that's fine. I mean, storylines-wise, there's not a whole lot to talk about for this race, really. There's a sprint.
Yeah.
McLaren will probably be better at this race.
You'd have thought you would expect. as long as the temperatures
I mean,
are
they-
reasonable.
And Red Bull, to be
They
fair,
won
Red Bull
the-
should be better here.
Yeah. I mean, McLaren won the sprint in Qatar last year at a time when they didn't really have a race-winning car, so you'd think they'd do well.
Yeah.
This
I mean,
time out.
by now though, this car is so different from
Yeah.
whatever they were running this time last year. That
Oh no, but that's what I mean. Like they didn't have a race-winning car last year and still managed to win the sprint.
oh,
so
I see what you mean.
it should
Yeah.
look good for them. More interesting though, we've actually got some breaking news that's happening on a Monday and not the day after we record as usual.
Yeah.
And that is that Cadillac and Formula One have an agreement in principle for them to join the grid as an 11th team in 2026. This comes off the back of, in recent weeks, sort of the Andretti side of things has kind of stepped back a little bit. And it seems like this is very much going to be branded as a full Cadillac entry, not an Andretti Cadillac entry. Obviously, we had Mario Andretti he stepped away as CEO, didn't he? And someone else moved in.
Yeah.
So it seems, at least in part, like we don't like the way Mario's gone about this. Now he's stepped away, we're slightly more interested. It would still be a team operated by Andretti. Like they're building a new factory at Silverstone. Sorry, Michael. I always get my Andretti's mixed up. It's Michael Andretti. I guess it's going to be a bit like when Alfa Romeo were kind of... Actually, no, that's not true, because Alfa Romeo were just a branding exercise. But it's going to be a team run by Andretti, but as a Cadillac team. Cadillac are planning on building their own engine, but probably not in time for 2026.
I think 28 they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Engine.
I also think the reason you might have got Mario Andretti in your head is because it's looking like Mario Andretti is part of the board for this new team.
Okay, that's probably what
So
I've
you've
read,
probably
yes.
seen that name, he's stuck in your head, but
Yes.
Michael Andretti was the one that was previously causing grief, I think,
Yeah.
generally speaking.
It doesn't mean they'll need to find an engine, because originally they had an agreement with Renault, but obviously they are stepping
It'll be
away
Honda.
now.
Or pretty sure it'll be Honda.
Because the team that provides the smallest number of engines is obliged to, and that would be Honda or
Ferrari?
Or Ferrari.
Ferrari won't.
It'll
I
be
guess it would
Honda,
have to
because
be
Honda will
Honda,
have
wouldn't it? Yeah.
Honda will be one team. Ferrari will still be more than one because they'll be supplying halves.
Yeah, because they're just going to
Yes,
be
because
Aston
it's just
Martin by
Honda, Aston Martin.
Yeah,
isn't
it'll
it?
be Honda
Yeah.
Aston Martin, so
Yeah.
it'll be Honda if it's a forced deal.
And I guess Honda and Cadillac have worked together in the past through things like IndyCar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's already a bit of a relationship
Although-
there.
Although,
but yeah,
actually, Discord, Clarence has just pointed out, technically Audi will be the only supplier of their engine as well at that point.
I
But I'd have
believe
thought
that-
You'd
there'd
go
be
with Honda.
Yeah, well,
You'd
I
go with Honda.
I think there'd be probably some kind of grace period for them being a new
Yes, there
supplier
is.
that they don't get thrown into that
yeah,
equation.
you
Yeah,
get a pass
possibly.
if you're a new supplier.
But even if there wasn't, like, that's such an unknown.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
you'd
absolutely.
go for Honda. You've got a
Yeah.
relationship with Honda already through IndyCar. Like,
Stick
it
with that.
just makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
And it's a proven race-winning championship.
Yeah,
winning
exactly. Well, yeah,
car.
championship winning car
Multiple.
at this time.
So.
It's huge getting a GM brand like that in F1 is
Yeah.
huge news, and getting an 11th team, that's so exciting.
Yeah,
We've been
yeah,
asking
finally.
for
I
this
think
so long.
It's
More cars on the grid. Perfect.
I think it just goes to show that it clearly wasn't putting an extra team on the grid that was the problem. It was the way it was being handled by certain
Yeah.
people that was unfortunately the problem.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that we were almost robbed of this team joining the grid because of that. But at least there appears to be some way of getting through it amicably, that it can still happen and still work.
Great news.
Yeah.
Great news. So next race is also a night race. So we've got the temperatures will be a little bit lower. Could Mercedes be in the mix for?
I want to mention one more thing, sorry, on Cadillac before we move on,
Oh, go on.
and that's to loop back around to Bottas. I'm calling it now. Bottas will be one of their drivers.
Oh, there it
Because
is.
Bottas would be a perfect driver for a new team coming into F1 right now.
I mean, Bottas's number one fan would say that.
I think he would, though. Like, you know, for the same reason that Audi wanted Hulkenberg, I think Cadillac gave Bottas would be a great
it's
idea.
a similar vein, isn't it? Yeah.
Bottas and Herta, maybe they'll bring someone from IndyCar over.
Yeah,
possibly.
Colton Herta
But yeah,
might be a good
anyway.
shout. Yeah.
I mean, IndyCar drivers tend to not. No offense, look, and you guys are probably Chris. You're probably going to about to disagree with me because I know you're a fan of Colton Herta, but I find that IndyCar drivers just don't tend to have the goods to compete in Formula One.
I think some of them do. I don't think Herta's one of them, personally.
Who would you say would, out of interest, since we're on that topic currently?
Palou would be
Yeah.
great in F1. Pato Award probably.
Pato's
They're the first two
done
that spring to
decent in
mind.
practice sessions before as well.
Yeah.
Which helps.
Yeah. But yes, shall we talk about Qatar?
Yeah.
As you say, Stu, night race, cold temperatures. It's a good point. Might suit Mercedes. Do expect McLaren to be good here.
Yeah, expect Red Bull to be good. Expect Ferrari to be good. I think we could have like a bit of a battle for the win in this one,
Yeah, I think
which is going to make it very difficult to make our predictions.
I think not being at a track that's sort of straight line, low aero dependent like what we were in Vegas brings Red Bull back into it. I think the cold night race element brings Mercedes into it like they were in Vegas. And
Although,
I think
having just said that,
yeah, go on.
the temperatures in Qatar last year almost killed half the grid. So
That's true, actually. Yeah.
Are we racing at the same time though, or are we not racing later this year?
Slightly later.
Yeah, I thought we were racing later for that
very
reason. So hopefully it will be cooler for both their
good
sake
point.
and the entertainment of the race's sake. But yeah, I think that like it might be one of those races and circuit combination. Hopefully that brings like that top four teams almost kind of all in contention with each other for different reasons, and like it kind of brings them a bit closer together.
bit of a leveler.
I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we do some predictions?
Yeah, we can start with fastest qualifier. This one might be a difficult one when we're talking about kind of the combination of the circuit and temperatures and all that, leveling the playing field a little bit. But in terms of fastest in qualifying, I'm going to go out there and say that we're going to see Piastri back in amongst it. I feel like McLaren have got a point to prove because they've not been that much in contention for the last couple of races. They've got a championship still to play for in the constructors, and they did go pretty well last year before they were in this good of a car. So I'm going to go with Piastri fastest in Q3. Chris?
You stole my idea.
Oh.
I also think it's Piastri.
Sorry. I mean, you're allowed to say the same if you want.
That's kind of. I was hoping. I wanted to go Piastri too, but I don't want to do the same. But I do think probably a McLaren. I'd like to say. I think it'll be really close between the McLaren and the Ferrari. So I'm basically it's between Piastri. I mean, it's obvious. You know what? I want to say Sainz.
Okay.
Oof.
Well, that plays nicely onto my win prediction because I'm going to say Sainz for the win. I think he looked good in Vegas, and if it weren't for just the Mercedes being like absolutely on it, I think Sainz could have still been a good shout for the win if it wasn't for that. So I think this will pull him a little bit more into play with them here, and I'm going to say Sainz for win. So, Stu, what about you for the win? Do you think Sainz can double it?
No, I'm going to go the other way. I think the Ferrari isn't good enough on its tyres still in the race compared to the McLaren. So I think I'm going to say Norris for a win on this one.
And Chris?
I'm also thinking a Norris win.
Okay. Oops. And first DNF, Chris. Do you want to go first on this one?
I did 0 to 0 last time and it worked out for me.
True.
So I'm going to apply the same logic and say, who had a particularly good race?
Russell.
Let's try...
Yeah. Russell.
I'll try Tsunoda.
Tsunoda, yeah, okay. Stu, what about you?
Oof. It's a tricky one. Alonso.
Oh, and
We're getting to that time of year where you're going to get car failures and stuff.
Yeah,
now as well.
I'm just going to go with the other Alpine because Stu made a very good point before the podcast ended that those Renault engines are leaving in style. So I'm just going to go with the other one and say
prematurely, leaving Formula One prematurely.
What's that? We're not having a new deal. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to go with Ocon and just go Renault engine failure. Number of finishes. Stu, do you want to start on this one?
Yeah, I'm going to go 18 finishes for this one.
I'm thinking something similar, but I'm just going to do something slightly different. So I'll say 17. And Chris?
17 as well.
And then our random driver for this week is Sergio Perez, as I think he's the only
Not
one.
that random.
Only one left in the pool, isn't he, at this point?
He
And
is,
then
yeah.
everybody goes back in for Abu Dhabi, which would be interesting.
Where did Perez finish last race? Just gone. It was like outside the points, wasn't he?
No, he just got back into the points, I think.
Oh, did he?
He qualified.
Yes, he finished 10th.
Yeah, he qualified terribly, but he did finish 10th.
Okay, I'll go first. I think he's going to come 10th.
Chris?
I think he will finish, as I do some last minute research, I think he's going to finish... He did finish 10th last year as well. 9th, to go on better.
Right. I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to have him as a non-finisher in 18th. One of our DNFs.
Ooh.
Well, that's me.
Second DNF.
Yeah. Well, third DNF, technically, if he's 18th.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Quick math. Not my strong point.
Right, that is us done. As I said earlier, if you want to get involved, head to backofthegrid.com. All the info's there. You can register if you haven't played before. Worth doing. Prize if you get all 5 right. Remember, this is a sprint weekend, so predictions will close slightly earlier. Off the top of my head right now, I've not got the time in front of me because I've not come prepared as per
Sometime
usual.
on Friday.
But it'll be some
UK time, it's 5:30 p.m.
on Friday. So there you go. Please convert that to local time and
Wherever you live.
submit your predictions accordingly. That is all. Thank you.
Probably Holland. based on the current statistics that we've been getting.
This is where for you, the YouTube algorithm, we should say something like, tell us what time you'll be submitting your predictions
In the comments below.
Yeah. Tell us your predictions in the comments below.
No, don't tell us your predictions in the comments below. Put them on the website, then tell us what you put on the website.
Yeah, do that. Do that.
Take a copy of them and paste them in the comments. But make sure to put them in the website as well.
Okay, we're wasting internet. Let's let them go.
We've got internet left. We've
Right.
got internet to spare. It's fine.
That is everything this week. Thank you as ever for joining us. We'll be back next weekend. God, it's been a long season. We'll be back next week to review the penultimate race of the season in Qatar. Until then, find us in all the places. I think Tom's already mentioned them. Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Bye, everyone.